Every day, drugs are being used in this country. Some come in through Mexico, some come in from Europe, and some are made right here in our own neighborhoods, which means that many of the people you contact as law enforcement officers are under the influence of some kind of drug. Some may be prescription drugs used legitimately. However, most are illegal drugs or prescription drugs that are being abused. The use of drugs is not a victimless crime. It's an immense burden on society and poses serious dangers, not only to the drug user, but also to others, including friends, family, innocent bystanders, and law enforcement officers. By being able to recognize the symptoms of specific drug influence, you, as a law enforcement officer, will be able to perform your job more safely, decrease crime in your community, stop recruitment of new, younger drug users, develop informants, recognize dangerous situations related to drug use, and recognize and discover other crimes connected to drug use. This video will provide you with the skills to recognize when someone is under the influence of a drug and what kind of drug it is, allowing you to respond appropriately as it relates to the law, your own safety, and the safety of the public, including the person or persons you're contacting. Additionally, we'll discuss the importance of documenting evidence, objective signs of drug influence and ingestion, how to conduct drug evaluation tests, other crimes that are commonly linked to specific drug use, and new trends in specific drug use.
I feel it's a fair statement to make that the majority of crimes are related to drug use in one form or another.
Drugs have the effect of degrading some of the core values of our society. A lot of the family values that we all know and love and cherish are many times destroyed by drug use.
When a person becomes very dependent on a drug, they're willing to do just about anything to acquire that drug, and that includes stealing from loved ones, family, and anyone.
Drugs permeate pretty much all levels of society, and the vast majority of calls for service that officers and deputies respond to typically involve drug use or drugs of some type.
Every study that's coming out is showing that a majority of crimes are linked to drug use, whether it's ID theft, fraud, property crimes, burglary, domestic violence.
So it's impacting the victims who are the victims of the crimes. It's impacting law enforcement because law enforcement is spending time investigating these crimes, trying to determine who's involved in it and why it occurred, and trying to get the victim's property back.
Of course, as you go higher up the food chain into the people that actually sell the narcotics, we get into the violent aspect of drug dealing, which leads to increases in homicide rates and serious shootings and other assaults with deadly weapons.
It becomes extremely important for the beat officer, the beat deputy, to be aware of how to evaluate somebody and identify whether or not they're under the influence.
I feel it's important for officers to recognize when someone is under the influence of drugs for a variety of reasons. First and foremost would be for their own safety. You need to start preparing to be able to handle the situation. People can react differently to different drugs.
For instance, somebody on stimulants is going to be susceptible to being highly agitated, probably more violent than someone who's depressed on alcohol or has just smoked marijuana.
Relax, Cannon. Turn around, put your hands behind your back now. Turn around and put your hands behind your back now.
And so for the officer to realize the potential of what might happen here is to their advantage to predict that and be able to respond to that before it happens.
They need to keep in mind that they're dealing with someone that's using narcotics, that through the use of of those narcotics is going to change how that person views things. And as that happens, to be prepared for anything and everything that could possibly happen.
We need to try to get a ballpark idea of what this person has on board and try to be able to say, okay, this guy is high on GHB or alcohol and is probably going to be more depressed, and so I need to make sure he doesn't pass out and hurt his head, as opposed to this guy's high on meth, and he's obviously paranoid, and he's saying people are behind him, going to chase him, and he's going to run out in the street, and so, or run away from you or become aggressive with you.
Another reason why it's important to recognize drug influence is that it points to other crimes that are possibly being committed. By recognizing a certain drug type, a law enforcement officer is clued to the type of crime to look for, thereby preventing another crime that will likely be committed.
Another important point to recognize is when someone's under the influence is not to just focus on the drugs itself as far as being under the influence or in possession. There's other crimes associated that the officer needs to be aware of, and with a little bit of investigation he may be able to make a couple of arrests, whether it be for theft or any other type of crime.
By the nature of their habit, they have to come up with that drug that they're addicted to, and so they're going to do whatever they can to get that drug, whether it's stealing on the TV and selling it, or whether it's mothers are prostituting their kids out for the money to buy their heroin.
So yes, it's very important for the on-scene officer to keep an open mind as to what type of drug he might be dealing with and some of the related crimes that are associated with that particular drug.
The laws that apply to the use, possession, transport, sale, and influence of drugs are different in Arizona and California. However, no matter which law is applicable to a certain situation, it's important for you as law enforcement officers to be able to recognize signs and symptoms of drug use and be able to document these so that when a case does come to trial, a conviction can be obtained.
When officers are interacting with someone under the influence of something, they need to be taking the mental notes of what's transpiring while they're contacting this person. Can this person do divided attention activities? Can they find their license while you're asking where they live or where they're going? They need to be asking, hey, what are you on? What did you last take? We're great in the law enforcement community about congratulating ourselves when we make a big dope arrest, but then we drop the ball when it comes to documenting all the stuff that led up to that discovery and led up to that arrest. We're real happy to congratulate everybody, and we're great to take pictures of how much dope we've taken. But we need to document all those mental notes we had to get us to that point, because 3 or 4 months down the road when it goes to court, we could lose the whole case if our documentation wasn't the best.
When it comes to documenting evidence, I've probably reviewed thousands of reports, and there's generally one theme that I find that runs through all of them, and it's a lack of articulation and detail.
We're not writing down those mental notes. We're not writing down the things he said. We're just going right to the fact that subject had drugs, arrested same, and going to court on that, and we're getting eaten up on the stand.
But if an officer can find the time to properly document everything that happened in the situation, in the arrest situation, many times it can reduce his court time significantly.
The officer wants to not only do written documentation in a report, but also take photographs if possible. If the officer sees that the person maybe is a intravenous drug user and sees injection marks on the arms, don't hesitate to take photographs of those. You want to be able to, when you do your documentation, to paint a picture for a judge or a jury that there's no doubt that this person was under the influence.
I encourage officers to talk to the drug users that they arrest. A lot of these people are more than willing to speak to you, and you'd be surprised what they'll tell you. Also, utilize your sources of information, your confidential informants. Oftentimes, officers, your best sources of information are drug users and drug abusers that give you information about bigger fish that you want to fry.
If you think the person is smoking marijuana, ask them if they've been smoking. A lot of times they'll tell you. And that's the same with any drug. If you suspect that they're using a drug, ask them, and a lot of times they'll give you a direct answer and tell you.
The first clue that you might be dealing with someone who's under the influence of a drug is the appearance that the person is not behaving normally. They may appear fidgety or agitated. They may appear sleepy, or their pupils may be constricted or dilated. They may be sweating without any apparent reason to do so, or they may be unable to stand without swaying back and forth. These and other signs would probably indicate that the person is either in need of medical attention or under the influence of drugs. Once you've ruled out a medical emergency, you will want to proceed with a field sobriety test.
Law enforcement officers quite often focus on signs and symptoms of impairment, when in actuality we should be focusing on what is normal. If an officer is able to identify a person's normal behaviors, their normal signs and symptoms, their normal vital signs, and their normal behavior during field sobriety testing, then when somebody appears abnormal or under the influence, they're easily recognized.
The normal range is from 3.0 millimeters to 6.5 millimeters as far as pupil size, a pulse rate of 60 to 90 beats per minute, and probably a blood pressure of 120 to 140 at the upper end or the systolic, and 70 to 90 at the lower rate or the diastolic. Those are all indicators that we consider normal, or another word would be typical. Anything that's above that or below that certainly bears watching or scrutiny, and anything that's dramatically different than that, either at the upper end or lower end, would be considered possible signs of under the influence.
When an officer comes in contact with a suspect or an individual they believe is under the influence, they should be looking for things like dilated or constricted pupils, jerky or slow body movements, any abnormal behavior. You might see somebody really perspiring on a cold day, or you might see somebody who's got goose pimples or goose flesh on a very warm day. There's all kinds of things that an officer should be able to key into to see if somebody's under the influence of a particular drug.
And from that contact, you then begin to make observations. The person's overall appearance, again, their eyes, are they bloodshot, watery? Their pupils, are they extremely dilated? Are they constricted? Is the person speaking rapidly and incoherently? Is the person speaking slowly and deliberately? Is their speech slurred?
The officer should be looking for a pattern, not a single sign or symptom, but a pattern of signs and symptoms which would lend itself to be consistent with a particular category of drug.
But it's the totality of the whole experience. And that's something the officer needs to keep in mind, is it's the totality of facts, and that's what makes documentation so important, is that you may see one or two signs and continue an investigation, and it may not in fact be related to drug use. It may be related to mental health issues, it may be related to something else.
I think an officer in a situation where he thinks medical assistance might be necessary, again, you have to kind of rely on common sense. If a person is unresponsive, maybe they have a faint pulse, and they're unconscious, I think that it would behoove the officer to err on the side of safety and call for medical assistance.
If a person has an extremely large or extremely small pupil size compared to the other pupil, they could be having a medical emergency coming on, like a stroke. If the individual is checking blood pressure, for instance, if a person is under the influence, their blood pressure will be up or down, and their temperature will be in the same directions in most cases because of the influence of whatever the drug is that's in their system. A person having a medical emergency, though, those things will go in reverse directions. The person could have an extremely high temperature and yet very, very low pulse or a low blood pressure, and vice versa. They could have a really high blood pressure and yet a very low pulse. And that is not normal, and that is a sign additionally of some type of medical emergency that needs medical attention immediately.
The cornerstone of drug abuse recognition is the Field Sobriety Test, or FST. Although different law enforcement agencies have different specific procedures, the basic FST observes a person's eyes, pulse, time perception, balance, and pupils. This is in addition to questions about a person's medical history, observable behavior, and observable drug use signs.
The field sobriety test will tell you why this person isn't like a normal person, because A, they're either on alcohol or stimulants or some other type of drug on board, or they have a bona fide mental or medical condition that has no effect. The drugs didn't cause this. It's because they're bipolar or they have some mental illness or something. And so the field sobriety test that the officer uses, that's how they determine what they think this person's on and what they need to do to help this person and to go from there.
A standardized field sobriety test series is extremely important for all law enforcement officers because it's a standardized method that we can use to evaluate everyone that we come in contact with that we believe is under the influence. It's systematic, it's standardized, and in most cases it's scientifically validated so that we can sit back and evaluate the individual specifically each and every time with the same types of tests and get the same types of responses from that individual. So it's extremely important that all law enforcement officers know what the standardized field sobriety test series is, how to perform each and every one of them, and also what the cues are or the validated facts for those particular field sobriety tests.
At a minimum, the tests that would be used to determine possible drug influence would include horizontal gaze nystagmus, vertical nystagmus, lack of convergence, pulse rate, Romberg test, pupil size, and pupil reaction to light stimuli. To investigate a person who's operating a motor vehicle, you could consider administering these 3 sobriety tests: walk and turn, one-leg stand, and finger to nose.
The 7-step testing process for drug influence includes the horizontal gaze nystagmus testing, which is, of course, testing for involuntary jerking of a person's eye. There's also vertical nystagmus testing. The drugs that cause those sorts of reactions, nystagmus, are the ADIP drugs, alcohol, depressants, inhalants, and PCP. The 3rd step of the 7-step process would be the non-convergence test, which tests whether a person is able to briefly cross their eyes or not. MADIP drugs cause a positive reaction in non-convergence, the MADIP drugs being marijuana, alcohol, depressants, inhalants, and PCP. The next step would be probably the pulse rate. The resting pulse rate should be between 60 and 90 beats per minute. Subjects under the influence of stimulants often have significantly higher heart rates. Someone that's under the influence of a depressant or an opiate oftentimes has a significantly lower resting pulse rate. The 5th step would be the Romberg stance internal clock test. It checks whether there's balance impairment or not, and it also tests their internal clock. Is it speeded up? Is it slowed down? Different drug categories do different things to a person's time perception. The 6th step in the 7-step process would be a pupillary comparison. You're comparing a person's pupil size to a known standard, oftentimes on a pupillometer card. And the final step, of course, of the 7-step process is the pupillary reaction, light reaction tests. And that's whether or not the pupil reacts to the absence or presence of light. And if it does react, how is it reacting? Is it reacting briskly, which is within 1 second under normal conditions, or is it a near normal reaction or a slow reaction, 3 to 4 second reaction to the absence or presence of light?
The results of these tests will help you determine the specific drug category that a suspect is under the influence of. These categories are depressants, which includes alcohol, stimulants, hallucinogens, PCP, opiates or narcotic analgesics, inhalants, and cannabis. Let's examine each one of these categories separately and discuss the specific drug and its symptoms. And please remember that the scenarios that you're about to see are designed as stimulus for discussion and not training as specific procedure. Follow your agency's procedure for contact and drug recognition.
Hi, is there a problem?
Yeah, your music's too loud. We've got someone complaints from your neighbors.
Okay, I'll go turn it down. Okay, is that all right?
Yeah. Is she okay?
Yeah, she's fine. She's just tired.
Has she been drinking tonight?
Yeah, she had a drink. She's a friend.
Okay, well, she doesn't look fine from here, and she also looks underage. You mind if we come in and make sure she's okay?
Okay, sure.
Thanks.
Hi.
Ben, how long?
You okay?
No.
No? What's your name?
Just
Sarah.
a couple months.
You had anything to drink tonight?
Do you have any?
You been drinking
anything
at
to be
all?
concerned about weapons, drugs?
Huh?
No, sir. There's
You been
no
drinking at all?
drugs in the house.
You know her last name?
It's mine.
No.
What's yours?
Panties.
Your panties?
You don't know at all?
You taking any medication at all?
No, I don't know her last name.
Hmm?
No.
No? Do you know what these are? Taking those at all tonight?
No.
No? Hey, does he know what these are?
What's that?
I don't know. I got it in Mexico. It's just to relax.
Just to relax? Did she take anything?
I don't know. I mean, she may have. I'm not sure.
Radio Pole 9, can I get FD for an eval? I'm gonna go ahead and call the poison hotline and find out what this is. Yeah, it's Officer Robinson with River City PD. I'd like to find out what a pill is that I have. Yeah, the numbers are 2357. Okay, thanks. Lady said it was GHB.
Did you give her GHB?
Yeah. I mean, I gave her one just to to relax. I mean, I didn't think it was gonna hurt her.
Why don't you go ahead and do me a favor? Turn around. Go ahead and place your hands behind your back. Place you under arrest for possession of a controlled substance.
Hey, Sam. Did you see this?
No, just relax. No.
Hey, he's been filming this the whole time.
You're just tired. Come here.
No.
Just come over here. Come here.
You're hurting me.
Just shut up, you bitch.
No.
Depressants is a category of drug typically signified by prescription medication. Alcohol also falls within that category as a depressant of the central nervous system. When we speak about depressants in general, we're talking about a category of drug that depresses the central nervous system, slows the respiration, slows the heart rate, causes the pupils to have a slowed reaction, and occasionally causes influence to the point where a person forgets to breathe and their heart forgets to beat if the drug is consumed in a very large quantity. Depressants run the gamut as far as prescription drugs. Some of the things that we typically see would include phenobarbital, Tuinal, Seconal. Klonopin's a very large drug out there right now in the depressant field. Ativan, Prozac, Zoloft, all these drugs typically fall within the depressants.
You're going to see people that are on Valium. You're going to see people that are on Prozac. You're going to see people that are on various other combinations of those or synthetic versions of those particular drugs, those being the two most common types of depressants that are out there, other than alcohol, which is the most common type of drug that we deal with in law enforcement.
Some specific symptoms is generally the same as somebody under the influence of alcohol. If you have somebody under the influence of a central nervous system depressant, slow and lethargic movement, unsteady gait or walk, vital signs which, as simple as the officer in the street can take a pulse. Their pulse will be depressed or slowed. Then if you take them into a controlled environment, you'll look for the blood pressure, which is also lowered, and then your respirations will be lowered too.
The CNS depressant category basically enables somebody to experience an alcohol-like high, if you will, without being drunk. An officer who contacts somebody under the influence of a CNS depressant may think the person is solely under the influence of alcohol based upon the way they're acting, the way they're walking, their lack of divided attention skills, etc. It's not until they put them on to a PAS device or some type of an intoxilizer that they realize this person has no alcohol on board and there must be another drug causing a problem.
Pupils will be at or near normal size. Unless you have somebody who's under a high dose amount, then you'll see that their eyes have actually dilated. People are under the influence of an extreme amount of alcohol, which is also a central nervous system depressant, causes the eyes to dilate for high doses.
You get into what you feel is a stimulated state, but what it's doing is it's cutting out some of the oxygen in the brain. It's causing the brain to begin to slow down. You begin to lose short-term memory. Your vision changes. The perception around you changes. You begin to get small amounts of tunnel vision, and you have certain other patterns that change within the body. Speech changes. That's why people that have been drinking or taking depressants appear to have slow or slurred speech.
Their reactions are going to be slowed. They might not answer questions right away, or they may appear to be uncooperative. They're really not. It's just the drugs interacting in their system. Their vital signs are going to be depressed. They'll be unsteady of foot. They will appear to be intoxicated by alcohol, which you will commonly see, but you won't have the smell of the alcohol scent on their body.
It can affect, depending upon what the individual's nature is, their eyes. A person who is drinking or taking depressants can appear to have puffy eyes, redness to the eyes, those type of things because of what it's causing the blood vessels in the eyes to do. Additionally, by affecting the eyes, it gives us one of our best tools as law enforcement officers to evaluate a person under the influence of a depressant. It gives us nystagmus, the involuntary movement of the eyes, whether it's horizontal, back and forth across the front of the eyes, or vertical, where you're moving just above the head with the stimulus in order to see whether there's the nystagmus or the ticking that goes on in there. Nystagmus has proven to be one of the most reliable tools we have to be able to evaluate somebody that's under the influence of a depressant like alcohol. Again, there's no always in this. There are always going to be people out there that don't quite fit the norm, but the higher the impairment level of an individual, the more that they are within that category and they are easier to identify, especially with nystagmus.
Some of the newer drug trends would be Rohypnol, which is no longer available in the United States, however can be readily obtained in Mexico, and GHB, gamma hydroxybutyrate, which is very easily made in somebody's kitchen and dispensed through a number of means, appearing almost as if the color of water.
GHB is currently being used, is known as the date rape drug, where it's being slipped into drinks and stuff at bars, parties, most commonly being slipped into a female drinker's drink. They'll drink it and then they'll actually almost go into like an extreme drunken, intoxicated state. And then after a certain point, while they're using it, they'll almost become comatose, where they realize something's going on and there may appear to be an active participant, but they're really not. They're just totally out of it. Rohypnol causes the same type of effects. It's not as common as it used to be, but it's still out there.
Rohypnol is typically found in 1 and 2 milligram tablets and placed into a drink, either at a bar or a party. Once that product dissolves, the woman or person consuming the drink would have a very depressed central nervous system. They may fall into almost an unconscious state where they're not aware of their surroundings or what's occurring with them. GHB is very similar in effect, and when consumed in some type of drink or openly consumed, it again causes some people to depress very severely with regard to their conscious abilities. And occasionally they'll report being aware of what's going on, but being unable to move their limbs to fight anybody off.
An officer will come in contact with somebody that's under the influence of GHB or Rohypnol after the fact, because what you'll have are the rape victims that come in and say, I've been raped or something's happened, but I can't tell you about it. And then they'll go into the interview and they'll start talking to them about it. Well, what occurred? What happened? And they'll say that I was at a bar, or I was at a party, I was drinking. Next thing I know, I wake up in this bed and my clothes are off. I know something occurred. I can't tell you who it occurred with. That's where you need to take it the extra step. You need to start asking further. And you need to get blood test and urine test right away from that so you can determine if they were under the influence of that particular drug.
Years ago, there were Mickey Fins that were given to people to make them pass out, basically. Those particular drugs would remain in the system for several hours, if not a day or two, so that we could test those particular drugs in a person's system to see if they were doped up for any particular thing. And yet nowadays, because of the fast-acting and quick-resolving medications that are out there, such as Rohypnol and GHB, it's extremely difficult for law enforcement to be able to prove that an individual was doped up while they were being attacked. It makes it extremely difficult for law enforcement to be able to put a viable case together in some instances.
GHB and Rohypnol are not just being used as the date rape drug. They're being used at rave parties. They are using it, and it is being widely abused right now. The danger related to GHB and Rohypnol use is it's extremely addictive, highly addictive. For the long-time user, we've actually had people that have suffered strokes, people that have suffered brain seizures or seizures as a whole from long-term use.
Somebody who's under the influence of a depressant might try to hide the fact that they're under the influence. This person is going to be more reticent, they're going to be more into themselves, less responsive. They're going to appear to ignore you. They're going to appear not even to know what you're saying because their response levels are so much lower.
You just need to be aware that their movement's going to be slow and lethargic. If you're going to be out having them do field sobriety tests, remember that they're going to be slow and their movement, motor skills is going to be extremely slow. They're going to be unsteady of foot. They could fall down. They could injure themselves.
And yet everything is still going on inside their brain, and they're still putting together all of this information that you're feeding them. And if you become frustrated with them, they will essentially shut themselves down from even communicating with you at all, which could keep you from getting extremely valuable information as you're conducting your investigation.
To summarize, the category of depressants is comprised of drugs that slow the operation of the brain and other parts of the central nervous system. This category includes drugs such as alcohol, GHB, Rohypnol, Valium, and pentobarbital. General indicators of depressant influence are sluggish and disoriented behavior, drowsiness, slurred speech, bloodshot, watery eyes, possibly decreased inhibitions, and impaired coordination or slowed reflexes. The specific physical symptoms are presence of horizontal gaze nystagmus, presence of vertical nystagmus, presence of lack of convergence, a slow pulse rate, slow reaction in the Romberg test, normal pupil size, and slowed pupil reaction. Two exceptions to these symptoms are methaqualone and Prozac, which can elevate the pulse rate and dilate the pupils.
It's my husband. He's acting crazy. I need you to just come in and get him out of the house.
Where's your husband at?
He's in the living room.
Are there any weapons in the trailer?
No, we don't own any guns, but look, he's just out of control. I need you to just come in and get him out.
Okay, we'll come in and talk to him. What's going on? You and your wife fighting?
She's freaking crazy. She just won't leave me alone.
Are you okay? Do you need an ambulance?
What's going on here? I didn't do anything.
No, he didn't hit me. We were just arguing. He's acting crazy.
I didn't do anything. I didn't touch you. What are you telling them, huh?
Well, he's been smoking all day.
Just leave.
Well, that's his pipe right over there.
When was the last time you used?
I don't know. What? 3 days ago?
All
You
right.
need to get her out of here.
Who
She's
these checks belong
nagging
to?
me.
I don't know. He's always at the computer messing with checks.
I ran both of them. Neither one have warrants.
Oh, really? Wife says that's his meth pipe. There's 3 suspicious checks here.
Sir, are these checks yours?
No. I just found those out on the street, okay? I was just goofing off of them. What are you hassling me here for?
You're getting a little agitated. Turn it. Let me take your
Come
pulse.
on. Come on. What did I do, huh?
You have fresh burns on your fingers and fresh burns on your lips.
Sir,
Place
what do you
under
have?
arrest.
This is total
Put
bullshit.
your hand up on your head.
This is bullshit. Well, I can't believe it. Look what you did to me. Jeez. This is total...
I'm going to take him down for a drug evaluation.
All right.
Are you happy now, huh? You happy?
Look, you did this to yourself.
How long has he had these checks?
A couple days. He always has checks around.
Do you know what he does with them?
I don't know.
I'm gonna call the bank and check on him. In the meanwhile, he is going downtown for Under the Influence.
How long is he gonna be gone?
Well, he'll be gone at least a couple days until arraignment starts.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Partner, the checks are stolen.
Oh, good.
We'll just add that to the charge.
Yeah.
Ready to go?
Okay.
Central nervous system stimulants are generally characterized as cocaine, methamphetamine, Ritalin, those types of drugs. They're basically designed to speed up your central nervous system and provide some type of a euphoric effect.
The big clue for me that someone's under stimulants is just their restlessness, their inability to stand still. If you simply ask someone to close their eyes and stand still and count to 5, they won't be able to do it.
Some of the symptoms that an officer would see in a person under the influence of stimulants would include dilated pupils, elevated pulse, elevated blood pressure, sweating, bruxism, which is grinding of the teeth, maybe the inability to stand still or sit still, constant moving, jerking back and forth at the waist or bouncing their legs constantly.
The pulse is going to go above normal. Normal under some situations could be 90, but you're going to get an individual who's going to be 95, 100, 110, 120 beats per minute, and that's not unusual.
Stimulant users will also, especially methamphetamine users, will also exhibit a profound sense of paranoia. People are in the bushes, people are hiding up on roofs watching them. Their houses are lined with cameras. They'll have the home security system with cameras and a monitor inside, watching the front door, the back door. And so for me, that's a real key symptom of a methamphetamine user, is just the paranoia attached to it.
Back in the 80s, when cocaine really became popular, we would often see paraphernalia such as this. We have the mirror, we have your typical razor blade, which you line out your drug in a powder form. And from there, we've also got the glass vials that contain the cocaine or the powdered cocaine. Oftentimes, they'd attach a little straw or a little spoon to it. You'd spoon out the drug, place it into each nostril and snort, obtain your high. That was really a paraphernalia of the 80s, and we've since moved in most communities into rock cocaine. Rock cocaine is typically identified more so with the glass pipe with some steel wool at the end in which you can place the rock cocaine onto. And oftentimes the patrol officer might see something like this, some type of butane lighter to provide the heat source to allow the drug to vaporize before they inhale it into their lungs.
They may actually see blisters on the suspect's lips, and that comes from as they smoke the pipe, they heat the pipe. And in heating the pipe, and generally it's glass, will cause that pipe to overheat and actually burn the lips of the person smoking it, which will give some signs, outward signs that officers may recognize. That comes with methamphetamine as well if they're smoking, but more predominant with cocaine-based use.
The only new trend that I'm aware of with regard to central nervous system stimulants is the use of the drug rectally. And by doing so, because of the vascularity of the rectal canal, the drug enters the bloodstream very, very quickly, produces almost a better high, and the signs of ingestion that are typically seen by police officers, i.e. Inner elbow, injection marks into a vein, inflamed nostrils, back of the throat red and raw, are not there anymore.
Stimulant users conceal their symptoms of drug use, first of all, by avoiding law enforcement. They'll be the person that'll be out, that they'll see you and they'll turn away right away and walk away from you. And again, I think it's because they have that sense of paranoia that someone's after them, the cops are always looking after them. And that, to me, that's a big clue for a stimulant user is they'll avoid contact with the officer.
What would you use the bad checks for?
Their checks have been returned to me.
Sean, why are you getting nervous?
Because you're making me nervous.
Okay. Central nervous system stimulants tends to attract people who are in the criminal aspects of forgery, identity theft, and dealing drugs themselves to support their own habits.
We're getting a lot of that where they're breaking into mailboxes, taking people's checks, washing them out, putting them in their names and getting the money to buy their drugs.
We find people are stupid and they throw away, you know how when you order checks they come in a box? Right. Let's say you end up closing that account or not using those checks because they printed your address wrong. They just throw the whole damn box away. And I mean, I can't tell you how many boxes of those we found. People throw, sometimes it's just one book of checks, sometimes it's whole boxes. Sometimes they're closed accounts, sometimes they're open accounts, it doesn't matter. As long as the accounts, it doesn't matter if they're open or closed, as long as the person hasn't bounced checks, they're not going to be in anybody's system. So if the account's closed, you can write checks on it until they start coming back bounced.
Some of the solvents that they actually use in making methamphetamine also are used to do what they refer to as wash checks. And what they do is they are able to retain the signature, but they wash all the information off the checks using these solvents. And in using those solvents, they then use the identity that they've taken, or they'll have the check written out to themselves and go cash it.
Domestic violence is another area where central nervous system stimulants often plays a part. A husband or a wife who becomes an addict becomes uncontrollable, aggressive, paranoid, thinks the whole world's out to get them, including their spouse. And oftentimes when officers or deputies respond to a call for service involving domestic, sometimes the central nervous system stimulant is involved.
All stimulants tend to increase the likelihood of violence, in particular domestic violence, but for some reason methamphetamine seems to really increase the likelihood.
They'll be involved in spousal abuse or in child abuse or something of that nature, that when the officers respond to those calls of domestic violence, respond to those calls of forgery or theft, and the defendant is still there, many times they will find evidence of drug use as well.
When dealing with somebody under the influence of any drug, an officer should foremost think of officer safety in the back of their mind. When you're dealing with individuals, especially individuals under the influence of methamphetamine, it tends to elevate them to the point where they become combative or hostile, and officers should keep that in mind.
The ways officers can handle people under stimulants, I think, is make sure they have backup with them. They don't want to be handling this person by themselves because they'll have an increased sense of strength and might even have more strength than normal just because of what they're on. And so officers need to have a backup there. They need to be able to control this person, whether they have to handcuff them or restrain them somehow, but they need to be able to keep that person in one location without having to worry about him rushing out into traffic, running away, running into someone's house that they don't know and creating a hostage or barricade situation. Those are the primary things I think an officer needs to be considering when they're handling somebody with stimulants.
Stimulants increase the activity of the brain and other parts of the central nervous system. This category includes drugs such as amphetamines, methamphetamines, cocaine, Ritalin, and Dexedrine. General indicators of stimulant influence are restlessness, dry mouth, bruxism or grinding of teeth, rapid speech, body tremors including eyelids, loss of appetite, and paranoia. The specific physical symptoms are no horizontal gaze nystagmus, no vertical nystagmus, no lack of convergence, an elevated pulse rate, a fast Romberg test, dilated pupils, and a slowed pupil reaction.
Yeah, come in. Dude.
I said. Oh, evening, officers.
We got a complaint about the noise.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we were just kind of on the tail end of a party joke.
Is this your house?
Yeah.
Smells like marijuana in there.
Yeah, it does.
May we come in and talk with you for a bit?
Yeah, come on in.
What kind of pills are those on the table?
Just a little bit of eat.
Is there anybody else in the house?
No.
Mind if I check?
Yeah, go ahead, man. Grab a beer. Sandwich. Make something home.
House is clear.
Hey, I'm gonna check this fellow over here. He's passed out over here.
Okay.
Hey, buddy. Just not responding. What's wrong with him?
Nothing. He just dropped and he dropped.
60 out of 22. Go ahead and send paramedics. We have one that's unresponsive. Let's go ahead and arrest him for possession.
Okay. Go ahead and put your hands behind your back.
Oh man, you gotta be kidding me. Man, we're just hanging out in my house. Dude, I offered you a beer.
The drugs in the category of hallucinogens are going to be ecstasy, LSD, mushrooms. Those are the more common ones right now we're seeing.
Hallucinogens are a category of drug, both naturally occurring and synthetic, that basically alter one's perception of reality. LSD is a prime example of a hallucinogen that's synthetically made through a chemical process by backyard chemists. Some naturally occurring hallucinogens would be psilocybin mushrooms, grow naturally wild, Washington, Oregon, typically, and the peyote cactus, of which grows wild in Texas and is used by the Native American Church for religious ceremonies.
Hallucinogens are primarily from Europe, where it's easy for them to make them in Belgium or Brussels or wherever, transport across the ocean. And we're even getting some from China and in Japan, where they're making them also out there. Ecstasy is harder to make, specifically to get the pill presses cost $20,000 or $30,000. So it's not as easily made as methamphetamine. So it's mostly imported into the United States from Europe.
The hallucinogens themselves produce some rather bizarre behavior. Oftentimes, officers and deputies are called to the scene because of somebody that's acting very bizarre. Oftentimes, they're very warm because it increases their respiration and body temperature, and they've disrobed to some degree. And when the officers arrive, they contact somebody whose perception of reality is completely different than the norm.
They could be standing on the street corner, but they think they're in a different country, or they're in a different persona, or a whole different thing that's going on, as opposed to what actually is happening.
When an officer contacts somebody that's under the influence of hallucinogens, the main thing they need to realize is this person has no perception of what true reality is. Any sudden movements, any loud noises, any quick jerks or thrusts could be interpreted as an attack upon the person, and they may respond just in order to defend themselves.
The danger to the user of hallucinogens is going to be the increased body temperature, the sweating, which could lead to dehydration. Their body is going to be unable to cool itself off, and they're basically going to burn up inside.
The person's heart rate is generally increased, and their body core temperature is generally on the rise, sometimes to dangerous levels which cause them to go into a coma or worse.
You're going to see these people always fanning themselves. You're going to see them sweating. It increases the body temperature, and that's how some of them actually die, is just from their body heating up too much. And so the officer needs to recognize that as a medical danger and get that person some medical treatment right away.
Currently, where LSD has become popular again is again with the rave crowd. For some reason, it's made a comeback with them, and I think part of it is the hallucinogen properties of LSD. That's the experience that those that are involved in the rave culture want, and LSD provides that, and MDMA provides that for them.
Most acid now is sold in a cap, in a little gel cap, or in a vial as liquid, and liquid can be taken a number of ways: placed under your tongue, put it in a dropper and put in your eye, put in an open wound in your ear. Any of that sort of thing is used, and it's a lot more intense, but it doesn't last as long as if you ingest it. If you ingest it, you'll have a high that can last anywhere from 8 to 12 hours. When you take it as a liquid, directly putting it in your eye or something like that, it'll be more intense, but usually only lasts 4 to 6 hours. An LSD high is it's a brain high. It really doesn't do anything to your body. It doesn't make anything feel more intense. It doesn't pick you up or anything like that. You'll definitely stay awake because your mind's working so fast, but it's not a speed type of awake.
They may be hearing what they smell and smell what they hear. The signals arriving in the brain are completely mixed up and makes no sense to you and I. However, to them it makes perfect sense.
MDMA or ecstasy is a pill. As simple as taking aspirin. That's a real attraction to younger kids, is that all it takes is one pill. They take that one pill, they're under the influence. Within several hours that influence goes away and they don't have to smoke or they don't have to inject that narcotic. It's strictly in a pill form.
It'll either come in a gel cap, which someone's taken amoxicillin or something and dumped it out and poured powder form ecstasy into it. Or what's more common is a pressed pill, like an aspirin or something like that. And that's more common because it takes a while for it to dissolve, so it's more of a time release. So your climax of the high is going to last a little bit longer.
The drugs seen at the rave parties is huge. I mean, it's just they not only are they common drugs such as marijuana and speed and cocaine being used, but then the extreme drugs such as GHB, ecstasy, Rohypnol, ketamine, those are being used, along with some inhalants.
Just about any drug that you can name, you'll probably find at a rave. Some more prominent than others. The main of them being ecstasy and coke. People are trying to sneak ecstasy in or trying to hide it from people. Most often it's they take their bag and they roll it up and put it in their jock or in their rectum. Just about anywhere. Girls will put it in their vagina. I mean, it's basic drug hiding 101. You know, we all see it on the movies, and it's all the same thing. You put it inside of stuffed animals when they go into the raves. You know, there's always hidden pockets in backpacks, and the retail culture is making items that are prone to drug use now. Shoes with hidden compartments, backpacks. Everything has a hidden compartment, and when you buy it, you pay an extra $4, and there it is. A lot of people will mix drugs, and what people do is they'll take their acid maybe an hour or two before they take the ecstasy. And then when they start coming up on LSD and they get their high there, they take the ecstasy to make it more of a happy trip. Cocaine and ecstasy, when you mix them, they call it a chemical flip. When you mix LSD with ecstasy, they'll call it a candy flip. And that's usually 1 hit of ecstasy and 2 hits of acid. And then mushrooms and ecstasy is called a hippie flip. And that's a 1/2 of mushrooms and ecstasy. And they all do different things, but for the most part, it just gives you this very intense body high.
What's real popular with MDMA use is glow sticks or real bright colors, and because that drug enhances their senses, gives them almost a feeling of euphoria as they look at these light shows and get this visual experience that they just can't get not being under the influence of MDMA or ecstasy.
Any kind of touch is going to be really intensified for them. So you'll see rubbing their own hands together, and wringing their hands, rubbing their own arms, kind of scratching themselves. If they're by themselves, if they're with somebody, you'll see people, giving each other these really hard, intense back rubs, or things like that. Lots of long, 30, 40, 50-second hugs.
They tend to have body tremors. They also will clench their jaws and will actually start grinding their teeth. Part of the paraphernalia for MDMA is pacifiers. And what they do is they use the pacifiers and they put them in their mouths to avoid grinding their teeth.
Your sense of smell, your sense of taste, and especially your sense of touch are very much intensified. You'll see people on ecstasy with face masks on, and they'll have Tiger Balm or something like that inside, or Vicks VapoRub that they're smelling because it's so intense. It feels like whatever they're smelling, the mentholyptus or whatever, is going up into them and just traveling through their body.
The hallucinogen user is going to have a harder time hiding their symptoms from the law enforcement officer, because once they get that stuff ingested into them, their inhibitions are down, they are more open, and they're more prone to tell you exactly what they're on, how much they took, where they got it, how much they paid. The typical user for hallucinogens is going to be, for me, the younger adult or young kid. Ecstasy use is real common. It's increasing among 8th, 10th, and 12th graders. It's increasing among the college campuses use, and like I said, I think it's because of it's that unity, the love, the respect, everything's peaceful type thing that appeals to the young person. And it's a drug that doesn't require them to shoot themselves, inject, doesn't require them to smoke. They just take a pill, and pretty soon the effects come on and they're feeling great. The long-term medical danger to users of specifically ecstasy is not only a long-term memory loss, but they're finding out in studies now that these people are going to be chronically depressed for the rest of their life, and that the common antidepressant drugs like Prozac and Xanax aren't going to work. They're not going to have any effect at all. And so we as a criminal justice element and as society are going to have to deal with these people for the rest of their lives.
Hallucinogens induce intense emotional states characterized by magnification of sensory perceptions and possible visual hallucinations. Some of the drugs in this category include MDMA or ecstasy, LSD, peyote cactus, and psilocybin mushrooms. General indicators of hallucinogen influence are dazed appearance, grinding of teeth, body tremors, excessive sweating, increased respiration, and hallucinations. Specific physical symptoms are no horizontal gaze nystagmus, no vertical nystagmus, no lack of convergence, an elevated pulse rate, a fast Romberg test, dilated pupils, and normal pupil reaction.
Move this tree. Move this tree. Move this tree. Move this tree.
Excuse me, sir. Can I talk to you for a minute? How are you doing? Sir, are you on some medications?
Move this tree.
Are you doing all right?
Move this tree.
Do you live around here? Sir?
Move this tree.
How are you feeling?
Move this tree.
Sir, do you have any idea where you are right now?
Move this tree.
Sir, I'll try to help you move the tree in a second. Can you tell me your name?
Move this tree.
Do you live around here, sir? Sir, I see your wallet. I'm gonna try and get it out, okay?
No. Move this tree.
91 Paul 7. Can you send me a cover unit, please?
What do you have?
Hey, Jim. This guy right here, he's very unresponsive, talking about moving a tree. He won't answer any of my questions. I don't know if there's any medical problems. He's sweating on the forehead. I think it's pretty cold out here. I reached to his back pocket to find his ID, and he doesn't want me there. He's very rigid.
Yeah.
He doesn't want me there.
Yeah, well, judging by that and the Sherman in his ear, it looks to me like he's probably dusted.
Yeah, you're right. Let's go ahead and take him in.
Okay. Whoa, wait a minute. If he has any of that stuff in his system, he's going to be sweating it out and getting it all over him, and you don't want to get it on you either, so
all right, well,
glove up.
I touched him earlier.
Okay, well then when we get back after we take him in, then wash up real well and get that stuff off of your hands.
Okay, I'm gonna go in straight to him. You wanna walk around him?
Yeah, I'll go to...
Let's go on the other side?
I'll go to his right, go to my left.
Okay.
You ready?
Ready.
Okay. Okay, pal.
Yes, sir.
Move this tree.
You want to move the tree?
Move this tree.
Turn around to your left, and we're going to help you move it. Okay?
Move this tree. Okay.
Come on around. We're going to help
Okay.
you move it. We need you to put your chest up against the tree so you can help us move the tree. All right?
Okay.
Move on up to it. Move on up to it. We got to push.
Move the tree.
We got to push it.
Move this tree.
Okay? And put your hands behind your back. Put your hands behind your back.
Move this tree.
Put your hands behind your back so we can move it.
Ready?
Now.
Move this tree.
Go ahead and cuff it. Go ahead and cuff it.
Move this tree. Move this tree.
PCP, phencyclidine, we refer to it as PCP, is a synthetic drug. It has a variety of effects on people, from being a stimulant to a depressant, hallucinogen. People can be passive one moment and then be extremely violent the next.
PCP is a unique drug that's placed in its own drug category. Recently, we've added to this category to include ketamine, which is packaged under several brand names like Ketaset, Ketalar, and Ketajet.
It's used exactly like PCP, and it'll show the exact same symptoms of PCP. So you're going to have to hopefully find Ketalar or ketamine bottles. If you find those on a suspect, then that'll be a clue. Another way an officer can determine that a suspect is using ketamine as opposed to PCP would be statements from the individual. They might refer to the drug as K or special K.
PCP is a fast high. It's a little expensive, but it's a fast high, and it has a long-term effect. Like if you were smoking in the morning, you last all day. You know, even up to the next day when you first start using it, you'll feel the effects the next day. Really, I would say it's like getting drunk in 10 seconds. You know, of how you would feel if you consume alcohol in a long period of time. Imagine being drunk after drinking a 12-pack within a minimum time of, let's say, 10 minutes, you know. And there's a blackout period. I will know how I got to where I was at, what happened, and as far as remembering what happened, there's no kind of mind recollection whatsoever. And that's the scary part of PCP, you know, because you're thinking, okay, I'm gonna take a couple of hits, and before you know it, you're in handcuffs behind a cop car, you're at the hospital, you're in jail.
PCP is one of those categories of drugs that is very dangerous. PCP users frequently don't feel pain. It's not that they have superhuman strength, it's simply that they don't feel pain to the degree that you and I experience pain. As a result of that, police officers who encounter PCP suspects have a very difficult time controlling them.
I know a lot of people who lost their lives because of this drug or incarcerated because of these drugs. So it's not something you can keep on using, you're going to keep on using because it's going to destroy you sooner or later and really fast. It's not something you're going to keep on thinking you'll be a functioning addict or using a drug. Usually people who use it, I'll say within 6 months, you'll either be in prison or you'll be in a recovery program or you'll be dead.
I've heard stories that people will actually break their handcuffs. They were able to snap through those. They have superhuman strength. It's an analgesic, so basically these folks don't feel pain, or their pain levels or thresholds are sky high to where you can bend and tweak their arms and they're not feeling it.
Someone on PCP is like an elephant, they call it as an elephant on a rampage, basically. Someone out of control, you cannot control the person. You know, and I've been around people who use PCP who are friends of mine who a couple times they use it and I have to seduce them, held them down because they go on a violent outbreak to them, and they'll come down with the drug and remember nothing. They'll be like sitting here normal, what happened? Well, you were doing this, you were doing that, but they have no recollection of what happened.
Some of the characteristics of a person under the influence of PCP would be elevated temperature, body core temperature, paranoia, depth perception problems with regard to walking. They're often sweaty. And frequently when the officers and deputies encounter them in the field, they've disrobed almost completely because they're so hot and sweaty.
I believe that the signs that you may be dealing with the PCP user are when people are reporting someone behaving in a bizarre manner, non-responsive, they're non-communicative. I mean, they're in their own world.
PCP symptomology is pretty distinct. When an individual is under the influence of PCP, they get a very dazed, blank stare look to their face. Their muscle tone becomes extremely rigid, and they walk with slow, deliberate movements.
It leaves a smell, a linger on your clothing and so forth. If you have it in your pockets, like if you have a suspect who's walking around with the drug in his pocket, already smoked, the resin does leave a very strong, distinct smell.
A person under the influence of PCP will generally exhibit normal pupil range. You won't see an individual under PCP looking flaccid. They're going to be extremely rigid, sweating, and PCP is a very cyclic drug. And by cyclic, the individual who's under the influence at one point is extremely passive, and then a short time later, between 5 to 10, 15 minutes later, they become extremely aggressive. Some of the things that officers should do when dealing with PCP suspects is explain what they're doing while they're doing it to the suspect. You don't want to sudden lights in their eyes. You don't want to scare them suddenly. You can actually set them off into that combative zone by doing that type of behavior. So if you explain to them what you're doing, it might take a while or a couple times to explain it to them, but it's usually better as far as dealing with them physically.
It's probably most prudent for the officer to handcuff and detain the subject, keeping the levels of light down, the noise level down, their voices down, and try to control the situation.
The officer should request backup prior to engaging with the suspect or confronting the suspect. Not only do they have to keep safety in their mind as far as the use of force situation with the suspect, but also they don't want to come in direct contact with the chemical itself.
Gloves are indispensable when dealing with this drug to prevent your exposure. PCP is one of the drugs that can be absorbed transdermally through your skin. If somebody were to splash PCP liquid upon your skin, you've been exposed. It will travel through your skin, ultimately make its way into the bloodstream, and cause an effect.
It's a dissociative anesthetic, so you're not really aware of the reality that's truly going on, and you're carrying a gun. So it's very important that you notify your supervisor immediately that you've been dosed and get medical treatment as soon as possible.
What's important in this category of drugs is if you've been exposed, immediately turn to your partner, ask them to take you to the hospital, surrender your firearm to that officer, because you don't know how you're going to react.
PCP is making a resurgence right now in the United States. For a while, it almost disappeared. And now it's coming back to a point that its use is almost as high as it was in the 60s and 70s.
A lot of the Hispanic gang members, Mexican mafia, were imprisoned starting back in the 70s. Their terms are now starting to come up. They're starting to cycle back out of the prison system. So PCP, at least in the area I work in, is becoming a little more and more prevalent.
PCP and ketamine can alter sensory perceptions, cause visual hallucinations, and cause extreme mood swings, which sometimes can be cyclic, alternating between passive and aggressive. In addition, PCP is a transdermal drug, so exposure can happen through the skin. It is therefore important to use gloves when handling the drug or a person using it. If you think that you've been exposed to the drug either through inhalation, ingestion, or transdermal absorption, seek medical attention. General indicators of their influence are blank or catatonic stare, muscle rigidity or unusual gait, profuse perspiration, loss of memory or sense of personal identity, slurred, repetitive, and/or fragmented speech, agitated and combative behavior, heightened sensitivity to auditory and visual stimuli, like flashlights and sharp voice commands, high tolerance to pain and a chemical odor. Specific physical symptoms are presence of horizontal gaze nystagmus, presence of vertical nystagmus, presence of lack of convergence, an elevated pulse rate, a distorted Romberg test, normal pupil size, and normal pupil reaction.
That looks like the guy over there. He matches the description.
My man, we talked to you a minute?
Yeah. Let me see your other hand there, please.
You live around here, boss?
No.
What's your name?
Charlie.
Charlie, you on probation or parole, Charlie?
No.
You got any ID with you?
No.
Hey, Charlie, you don't have anything illegal on you? No weapons? No drugs?
No.
You don't mind if I pass search you?
No.
Bring your hands back for me. Spread your feet for me. What's this in your pocket?
Oh, allergy medicine.
Okay, Charlie, just relax for a minute.
You all right, bud?
Yeah.
You okay?
Yeah.
His pupils.
Take your glasses off for me, Charlie. Set them on the trunk. Look at me for a minute. Kind of constricted. He might be loaded.
See the doctor for anything right now, Charlie?
No.
No. No prescription medication right now?
No.
No. Any recent head injuries?
No.
No. Been drinking today, Charlie?
Dude, it's early.
What I want you to do, you see the light under my finger? Open your eyes for me, bud. See the light? What I want you to do is follow the light with your eyes without moving your head, all right? All right, great. We're going to do the same thing. We're just going to go up and down. Your eyes open for me. There you go. Great. Keep watching the light, Charlie. I'm going to make a couple circles. Keep following the light with your eyes. Doing great. Now when I get to the top here, I'm going to bring it down to the bridge of your nose. Follow it all the way in. Should make you go cross-eyed. Great. All right, Charlie. Do me a favor. Give me your right wrist for me. Let me take your pulse real quick. Let me have your hand. 50. Okay. All right, bud. Open your eyes, Charlie. You all right? Okay. Look at me, Charlie. What I want you to do is put your heels and toes together, just like that. Feet side by side. Go ahead and stand just like I'm standing. Great. Stand just like that. Hands down by your side until I tell you to do otherwise, all right? Okay, look at me. What I'm going to have you do is I'm going to tilt your head back slightly and close your eyes. When I get you to that point, I'll say start. From the time I say start, I want you to estimate in your mind. Don't count. Estimate in your mind when 30 seconds is up. When you think 30 seconds has expired, I want you to open your eyes, look at me, and say stop. You understand the test, Charlie? Great. Go ahead and tilt your head back, close your eyes.
It's been about a minute. Let's wake him up.
Charlie, wake up, dude.
Wake up, Charlie.
Over here. Charlie, you all right? What I want you to do is open your eyes as wide as you can for me so I can see the inside of your eyes. I want you to pick a point behind me, just stare straight over my shoulder, okay? Open your eyes up for me. Open them up for me so I can stare. Excellent, excellent. I want 5?
Yeah.
All right, Charlie, great. What I want you to do is close your eyes for me until I tell you to open them. When I tell you to open your eyes, do just what you just did. Stare straight over my shoulder, all right? All right, go ahead and close your eyes, bud. All right, Charlie. Stare straight ahead, open your eyes for me. I don't see any reaction. All right, Charlie. I'm going to take one more pulse. Go ahead and hand your right hand out to me.
Okay. Hey, Charlie, you ain't slamming or anything on your arms, are you? Sticking, using needles?
Dude, I don't,
roll your sleeves up for me.
Dude, I don't do needles. They're dirty.
You don't have no tracks?
No.
Let's see your other arm.
There you go, Joe. So I was getting his dope by doing auto burglaries.
Dude, I just found that. I don't know what that
All right,
is.
Charlie, turn around for me. Bring your hands back behind your back. Lock your fingers together.
Oh, man.
Good, Charlie. You're under arrest for being under the influence and for possession of burglary tools.
Dude.
Okay. You don't have anything illegal on you? No drugs or anything like that?
No.
You said this is for your allergies?
Yeah.
All right. It smells like vinegar. I think that's his heroin.
Yep.
That's why he doesn't have any track marks.
Well, soon enough.
Okay, Charlie, let's walk back towards the car here.
Oh, come on, man. Let me walk. I'm at small time. I'll hook you up with my connection, man. He deals in weight.
What you got?
Man, he's got all sorts of stuff.
Well, hop here in my office and we'll talk about it.
Opiates are a category of drug that were designed to relieve pain. They're made not only synthetically but naturally occurring opiates throughout the world today. Some examples will be morphine, heroin. Some examples of the synthetic and semi-synthetic might be Vicodin. And basically these drugs were given during and after surgery to relieve a person's pain, to help them heal internally and externally. Unfortunately, in our society today, that category of drug is abused fairly regularly by all walks of life.
What we're commonly running into, of course, is tar heroin. It's cheap, and there's just a glut of it on the market. That's the largest group of opiates that an officer will come across.
Oftentimes, a patrol officer will come across paraphernalia such as this, often called a kit. A heroin user uses this kit to obtain his high. You can see that there's a syringe with a needle attached, there's a spoon, and there's a Q-tip with a piece of cotton. The way this is used is the syringe is used to extract the heroin, which is dissolved in water on the spoon, and it's sucked through a piece of cotton into the needle and then injected into a vein to obtain the high from the heroin.
One of the new trends that we are seeing in California is the use of OxyContin. OxyContin is a pharmaceutical-grade narcotic analgesic. It is on a time-release capsule, which means that as an abuser, I could take that time-release tablet, crush it up, therefore mitigating the time-release issue, and ingest that entire OxyContin at one time. This produces effects very similar to that of heroin. OxyContin users will not have any type of paraphernalia on them that you might recognize readily with other narcotic analgesic users like needles or tourniquets. So instead of looking for traditional signs and symptoms of paraphernalia, look for pill bottles.
There's a lot of subjects that are younger that are afraid of needles, they're afraid of hepatitis, contracting hepatitis, they're afraid of contracting HIV. They try to stay away from needles. So what they've done is they still buy their tar heroin, and what they do is they will put the tar heroin into a neosynephrine type of container, add some warm water. The tar heroin is water soluble. They then shake the mixture, and then they can introduce it into their system nasally by snorting it. You'd look at a neosynephrine bottle and think, oh, this guy's got a cold, when in fact it smells of vinegar and it's in fact it contains heroin.
Typically, an officer on the streets looking for heroin packaged in tin foil or a balloon or some type of paper or plastic, and by placing it into a neosynephrine or Visine bottle, they've hopefully avoided the detection of the police officer or deputy, as well as it's a very easy way to ingest the drug through their nose or through the membranes of the eye.
If the officer comes in contact with someone that he believes may be under the influence of a narcotic, there's signs and symptoms that he can look for. A person is going to generally have very constricted pupils. They're going to be non-reactive to light. Again, the subject may become agitated. He may start sweating. He may start vomiting. He may start complaining of muscle cramps, stomach cramps.
Most immediate symptom that an officer would see on the street of a subject that's under the influence of an opiate would be the constricted pupils, probably in the area of 1.5 to 2 millimeters. These pupils will not show any visible reaction, nothing that we can perceive while watching the pupil react.
They're often scratching their face, scratching their body as a result of the histamine that's released when you take heroin internally.
Other symptoms would be a decrease in pulse rate, a decrease in respiration rates, blood pressure drops, person's extremities, their hands and fingers, their feet and their toes under the influence of heroin. Oftentimes their extremities will become cool because the blood pressure is not being sent out to the capillaries. Their body temperature drops.
Heroin users basically coined the term on the nod, which means that their head is falling forward and their chin often touches their chest as they're basically falling asleep and coming back around as you ask them questions.
Their balance may be impaired again depending on their tolerance to this drug. You may see a visible sway side to side, a visible sway, heel to toe, maybe a circular sway. The person's gait or the way they walk may be slowed.
Opiates is a category of drug that is very dangerous to the user. Somebody who doesn't know their tolerance or threshold level can quite easily overdose. Basically, they stop breathing, their heart stops beating, and until medical aid arrives and a drug such as Narcan is applied, they have very low chance of surviving once they've reached the overdose level.
Opiate abuse cuts across all socioeconomic lines, and you can see it with rich people as well as with poor people, middle class. So I'd say there's no hard and fast rule as to who becomes an opiate abuser.
Narcotics, we've seen just about everyone using it, male, female, and across the board on all the races. So there's nothing specifically that should make the officer focus on a certain type of person that may be a narcotic user. Should keep an open mind and investigate everyone equally.
Well, I found a little black container. It's got a couple little envelopes.
Drugs can be hidden anywhere. Users can hide them, in a bike that they're riding, inside the car, inside their homes, on their person. When it comes to the places that people will hide their drugs, it's an infinite possibility.
The biggest trend for hiding it is candles. Right now, people, either small amounts or big amounts, if they're, because it's so easy, you can go into Michael's and buy candle making kits. So they enclose large quantities of heroin for safekeeping for long term. They completely encase it in wax in the candle. So I've had people laugh about having a big candle on their living room table and the police come in on a probation check and leave, and they've got, a quarter pound on the table and the cops never got it. They use food. They hide it in food in the refrigerator. There's a big one. Or in the cupboard, in open boxes of cereal, flour, sugar.
The danger for an officer when you're dealing with a narcotic user is that the person could become very agitated. It has a physical impact on the person when they don't obtain their narcotic that they need to maintain. So they become very agitated if they haven't acquired that dosage for that day. So it may be a combative situation resulting in officer safety situation for the officer. Also, a lot of these drugs are used intravenously. So an officer has to be aware of needles on the person and possibly an injection. If the person does have needles, there's always the risk of hepatitis and HIV and AIDS that the officer is exposed to.
Ask the person, hey, do you have any needles, or do you have a hypodermic needle syringe? Do you have a kit on you? Am I going to get stuck? If so, if you do, listen, where is it? I don't want to be stuck.
We had an officer in our jurisdiction, instead of, during a search of a vehicle, didn't look where he was placing his hand, and in doing so, a needle went through his thumb. And it was a used syringe, and it was a syringe that the cap was off. And he had to go through some series of shots and has to continue to get his blood drawn for a year to a year and a half to make sure that there's no disease that was transferred during that point. So it's extremely important that officers keep in mind that some of the paraphernalia associated with these drugs can easily be turned as a weapon against them, and to keep that in mind as they deal with them.
Heroin addicts often resort to a life of thievery, petty thefts, shoplifting, burglaries, I mentioned before, residential burglaries, commercial burglaries, auto burglaries. They basically resort to a life of theft in order to feed any addictions that they may have developed with the opiate use.
Opiate users tend to be your shoplifters, your burglars, occasionally your robbers. This drug is a drug that requires constant attention. Often a user has to ingest 4 to 6 times daily. That requires money. And that money is something that they steal from other people because it's difficult for them to hold a normal job and continue their drug influence.
Opiates, or narcotic analgesics, are very addictive drugs that are used to relieve pain. Some of these drugs, such as heroin, codeine, and morphine, come from the opium poppy plant. Others, such as methadone, Demerol, Dilaudid, Vicodin, and Percodan, are synthetically manufactured. General indicators of opiate influence include droopy eyelids, nodding off or drowsiness, slow breathing, slow deliberate speech, profuse itching or scratching, dry skin and mouth, and possibly puncture wounds. Specific physical symptoms are no horizontal gaze nystagmus, no vertical nystagmus, no lack of convergence, a lowered pulse rate, a slow Romberg test, constricted pupils below 3 millimeters, and little or no visible pupil reaction.
Hey buddy, you all right? He's got pain all over his face. Better call for a paramedic.
River City 1, request ambulance 1 time, man down.
Looks like he's been sniffing paint. Hey buddy, you all right? Hey, what's your name? What's your name, guy?
Fuck you, Bob.
You doing okay?
Fuck you.
What's your name?
What? Dan?
Your name's Dan? How you doing today?
Fuck you.
Sniffing some paint today?
Fuck you.
Just stay right there. I got the paramedics coming to come check you out.
What kind of things you like doing? Skate? What's going on?
Cops just told me he's been sniffing some paint. You know, why even sniffing paint?
Well, take a look around. I've been living in my fucking car for 2 days. I don't have any money. So that's all I can get a hold of.
Well, we're concerned about you because you're frying your brain cells doing this.
Oh, really? Okay. Thank you, Barney.
Well, we can do this 2 ways. You can either come with us or you can go with the cops.
Inhalants is a category of drug that is characterized by basically robbing your brain of oxygen. By inhaling a particular substance, you're robbing the bloodstream of oxygen traveling to your brain and causing a euphoric effect, be it very minimal and for a very short period of time.
Inhalant category includes 3 subcategories of drugs. You have your volatile solvents, your anesthetic gases, and your aerosols. And each one of these subcategories produces different physiological symptoms and effects on the human body.
Inhalants typically cover the gamut of paints, glues, toluene-type substances.
Some will actually increase your pulse and blood pressure. Some will actually diminish your pulse and blood pressure. Some will cause minor pupil dilation. Others won't cause minor pupil dilation. It's one of the most confusing categories of drugs to nail down symptomology.
One of the drugs contained within this category would be nitrous oxide. Typically, dentists use it during some of their dental procedures. It's also found in the backs of hopped-up hot rods for additional speed at the racetrack.
Nitrous oxide and certain other inhalants are used commonly at rave parties that are attended by young kids, and so the use of this drug spreads amongst that age group.
Teenagers quite frequently use this category of drugs because it is inexpensive and easy to get.
Products that they're looking for are usually in their parents' medicine cabinet or in the garage, and very easy for them to obtain.
This type of drug also doesn't leave very many symptoms that a parent would recognize easily.
They can use at a rave party, come home a half hour later, and the parents are not aware that their kids were using this drug just a half hour earlier.
Many of the slang terms that are out there right now for inhalants are chemo or huffing. Our users that are using inhalants typically are teenagers from the age of even 12 up to 18 who are getting these products from their parents' kitchen sinks and or buying them over the counter at grocery stores.
Most inhalants, the observable symptoms are going to be 15 to 30 minutes max. Some a lot less than that, depending on the type. So unless you come across the individual using the drug, it's going to be rare that an officer is going to actually see a person under the influence or showing the symptoms of the drug. Dizziness, lightheadedness. In almost all instances, the individual is going to complain of a headache or have a headache. They will appear to be sedated or similar to alcohol abuse.
This category of drug destroys brain cells immediately. And oftentimes, some of these children end up in developmentally disabled type classes as a result of memory loss and thought process problems.
Other signs and symptoms might include horizontal gaze nystagmus as well as vertical gaze nystagmus.
Typically, we see the kids of low-income areas walking around with spray cans of paint, Glade air fresheners, these types of solvents and anesthetic gases. And typically it's used by spraying it into a sock, putting that sock over your face and inhaling the fumes repeatedly until you basically pass out.
Some of the telltale signs involving inhalant abuse will involve the obvious. You'll see some spray paint on their face, around their nose area from sniffing in a rag or some spray paint or something to that degree.
Because this category of drug leaves the body so rapidly, it's very important for officers to document everything that they encounter upon initial contact. They need to document the scene, the condition of the person that they contact, and how rapidly the person becomes normal once again after first contact. It's rare that you're able to do any extended evaluation because it leaves the body so rapidly, so your initial first evaluation with regard to horizontal gaze nystagmus, vertical nystagmus, and non-convergence is very crucial. 5 minutes from now, it may not be there.
Inhalants are a broad category of drugs such as solvents, aerosols, and anesthetic gases that are inhaled. They block the passage of oxygen to the brain. And some examples are nitrous oxide, spray paint, airplane glue, toluene, acetone, gasoline, and paint thinner. General indicators of inhalant influence are slurred speech, poor coordination, headache and nausea, odor of substance on breath, substance around mouth or nose, watery eyes, and possibly unconsciousness. Specific physical symptoms are presence of horizontal gaze nystagmus, presence of vertical nystagmus, presence of lack of convergence, an elevated pulse rate, a normal or slow Romberg test, near normal pupil size, and normal to slow pupil reaction.
Good morning, ma'am. Can you shut your truck off for me, please? Thank you. The reason why I stopped you is because you didn't stop at the posted stop sign.
I am running late. I didn't even see it.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
All right, may I see your license, registration, and insurance, please? Thank you. Take your glasses off for me, please. Thank you. Ma'am, why are your eyes so red and bloodshot?
I think it's my allergies today.
All right. You take any medications?
No.
Any drugs?
No.
No. Have you had anything to drink?
Nope.
No? Okay. You step out of the car for me, please. I just want to make sure you're okay to drive.
Oh, you know, I really need to get going.
Okay. I just want to make sure you're okay to drive, okay? First step to the sidewalk, please. Okay, ma'am, if you could stand right here for me, put your feet together, arms by your sides. I'm going to ask you some questions, explain and demonstrate some field sobriety tests to make sure you're okay to drive, okay? All right, have you had anything to drink today or last night?
No.
No? Are you taking any medications or drugs?
No.
Do you have any physical problems?
No.
Are you sick or injured?
No.
Okay. What I want you to do, keep your feet together, arms by your sides, keep your head still, follow my finger with your eyes only, okay? Okay, now I'm going to make a circle with my finger. Continue to follow my finger. After I make the circle, I'm going to bring my finger towards the tip of your nose. I want you to cross your eyes for me, okay? Okay, now what I want you to do, put your right foot in front of your left for me. Just like that. Go ahead and do that for me. There you go. Touch heel to toe. Good. Keep your arms by your sides. Stay in that position while I explain and demonstrate the test to you, okay?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Okay, good. Now what I want you to do is put your feet together again for me.
Officer, you know what? I need to get going. It was a stop sign.
Okay, ma'am, just give me a few more minutes of your time, please, okay? I
This
just want to make sure
is-
you're okay to drive.
I am okay to drive. This is unnecessary. I have people waiting for me right now.
Okay, I'm going to determine if it's okay for you to drive, okay, and it is necessary. So just give me a few more minutes of your time, and I'd appreciate it, all right? Now we're going to do standing one leg, okay? I don't care which foot you use. That's up to you. I'm going to use my right foot. I'm going to show you how to do the test, and I'm going to explain it to you, okay? Again, you keep your arms by your sides.
1007, 1008, 1009, 1010, 1011.
Okay, why don't you stop, ma'am? Go ahead and put your feet back together again for me. Arms by your sides. Got one more test here, okay?
I can't
Okay,
believe
go ahead and
this.
put your arms out like this as you're pointing fingers out. There you go. Stay in that position for me while I explain and demonstrate this test, okay? What I'm going to have you do when I tell you to, you're going to put your head back and close your eyes. Left. Right. Left. Okay, ma'am, go ahead and open your eyes for me. You can
Are we
relax a
done?
little bit, okay? Can you do me a favor, open your mouth for me, stick your tongue out? Okay, go ahead and close it. Okay, you're showing symptomology of smoking marijuana. Okay, your eyes are bloodshot and watery. Okay, your tongue has a green coating on it.
I have allergies.
You have eyelid tremors, and you didn't do very well on your field sobriety tests. When was the last time you smoked marijuana?
I told you, I have not smoked.
Okay. I'm placing you under arrest for DUI. Go ahead and turn around, ma'am. You're under arrest for driving
this
under
is
the influence.
ridiculous.
Go and put your hands on your head.
I have a prescription for this. Go arrest some real criminals.
Okay, ma'am, that doesn't give you the right to drive under the influence.
The category of cannabis, which is sometimes called marijuana, includes 4 different entities. Cannabis, which is the plant marijuana. Hashish, which is a form of marijuana in a resin. Hash oil, and a pharmaceutical-grade Marinol.
You often see some type of a stash can with a marijuana user, keep it in their room or their car. This Blue Diamond almond can is a good example. From the top, it appears that there's almonds actually inside. There's the rattle of the can. However, if you've simply loosened the bottom of the can, you can see the can comes off. There's about 3/4 of a can of a false bottom where you could stash some drugs, other paraphernalia, etc. So the patrol officer out on patrol really needs to look beyond what's staring them in the face and investigate a little bit further to make sure that these are what they think they may be.
One of the things that the officer should be aware of is that people that smoke marijuana also try other drugs, and they may mix it. And they may put a marijuana cigarette, they may put LSD on it, which is an officer safety issue that the officer doesn't want to make contact. It can be absorbed into the skin, so it's important that when an officer makes contact with someone and he has marijuana cigarettes in him, if there's any chance or opportunity, the officer should put gloves on before making skin contact with the marijuana, and ask the person if anything has been altered on the marijuana, how they put LSD on it, or any PCP.
Cannabis today is not the same as cannabis 10 years ago. 10 years ago, if you had cannabis with a THC level of 6 to 8%, you were talking probably the best top-of-the-line cannabis that you could get.
The THC level, the tetrahydrocannabinol level within cannabis currently can reach up to 25%. This is a severely impairing drug, especially for those people who are driving a vehicle.
10 years ago, cannabis didn't dilate your pupils. Now, cannabis dilates your pupils similar to stimulants. So it is basically a new drug.
Suspects who are using marijuana quite often will display a lack of convergence in their eyes while not displaying any type of horizontal gaze or vertical gaze nystagmus.
Typically, you're looking for a person who has dilated pupils. They often have a greenish-whitish coating on their tongue as a result of smoking the product. And typically, their divided attention skills are very minimal at best.
Marijuana causes time and depth perception issues, so quite often you will see these people unable to satisfactorily complete the finger-to-nose test and possibly impaired time response on the Romberg test.
Primarily, officers will come into contact with people under the influence of marijuana during their patrol activities, whether it's going to a party, possibly, a traffic stop.
Current statistics for marijuana users encompass a wide range, from early users as early as 12 years old up to people in their 50s and 60s. However, the largest growing population for marijuana users currently are 16 to 24-year-olds.
Oftentimes, a person is driving down the street and their impaired driving causes an officer's attention to divert to that particular person, and a traffic stop is initiated. Oftentimes, officers overlook marijuana influence or cannabis influence because they see no alcohol, they smell no alcohol, and signs and symptoms of other categories of drugs aren't really present. It's basically written off as, oh, it's just marijuana, and the person is allowed to continue driving away with some severe impairment with regard to their driving abilities.
People driving under the influence of cannabis are showing a lot more impairment than they did 10 years ago. It's more readily evident to the officer that they are impaired. They bring them to the station and they blow zeros, and they can't understand, why is this person, he's failing this field sobriety test, he is swerving all over the road, and they need to keep that in mind, that cannabis is a real popular drug that is abused nowadays.
In 2001, it was reported that over 8 million drivers drove their vehicles while under the influence of an illegal drug.
And the thought that comes to my head is a teenager driving down the street, goes to change the radio, the CD, cassette, what have you. In their mind, they look down for a split second. But when they look back up, they're in somebody's back seat. I mean, DUI and marijuana, serious. Should be of concern to everyone.
Marijuana, hashish, and hash oil are drugs that come from the cannabis plant. Other drugs in this category are Marinol and Dronabinol, which are synthetic forms of THC, or tetrahydrocannabinol, the active ingredient in cannabis. General indicators of cannabis influence include bloodshot eyes, eyelid and body tremors, dry mouth, loss of sense of time and space, lack of divided attention, odor of burnt marijuana, debris residue in mouth, and green or yellow coating on tongue. Specific physical symptoms are no horizontal gaze nystagmus, no vertical nystagmus, lack of convergence, an elevated pulse rate, a distorted Romberg test, near normal or slightly dilated pupils, and near normal pupil reaction. Recognizing drug influence is an important skill for all law enforcement officers. We hope that this video has assisted you in improving this skill so that you can more readily recognize the signs of drug influence and be able to respond quickly and appropriately.